Welcome, both of you. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. We're joined by Carla Fraser and Jamie Weston, who are the filmmakers behind Wings, which you would have seen earlier on in our Joy Showcase. And you'll see them again tomorrow in the audience favourites. Of course, Wings picked up the Audience Award, Iris, recently. So congratulations for that. It'd be great to hear about how the film how you found the reception of the film, because it's just had such a warm reception from what I've seen, and even just from watching the trailer you get such a warm feeling from it. So how's it been for both of you, the reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it's been particularly warm considering the situation that we're in as well, because it is just such a shame to be so far away from your audiences when you're making something. I think you're thinking about watching it in a cinema together and watching people's reaction, and it's been a shame not to be able to do that. But the film festivals, to credit to them, have really made an effort, and especially Iris. Iris has gone above and beyond to kind of connect and still make the most of this situation. But yeah, it's been really lovely. We've kind of the film festivals roll in, and they'll be from Wales to Australia. And it's surprising because I think because it's quite English, being World War II and our history in some ways, we didn't expect people from other countries to reach out and be really touched by it. And so yeah, I think that's been really lovely.
Yeah, it's often just it's often a bit of a surprise, really, when you sort of throw it out into the world and then loads of people say, "Oh, it's really good, well done." It's like, "Oh, cheers." Sort of, I don't often put many films into festivals, so only if I really believe it's worthwhile. So, actually getting feedback from people generally who have quite an emotional sort of reaction to it is really lovely, but also on sort of unknown territory sort of for myself. I'd be like, oh cool, like people are engaging with it, and it's all positive. It's nice.
Oh, brilliant. And of course, you're, as one of the best of British as well, you're also on Channel 4 All 4, because the award is sponsored by Film 4, which allows you to reach an audience over the course of, I think it's on there for a year. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, that's such a brilliant opportunity to get your face out there, as well as your writing credit, Carla, and then for you, Jamie, as well as a director and editor, and you are really a jack of all trades. Jamie, what were your roles on this film, and then how did you bring Carla into the mix and get her involved as well?
So I sort of wrote the original first sort of draft of it. That was pretty much more of a synopsis really than a script. And then I got in touch with Carla and just said, let's do a film. We'd done a film, I don't know when it was it 2016?
Yeah, around that, yeah.
Something like that. We did a film and that did really well. And Carla has a sort of a traditional look, English rose. And I just thought, you know what, you'd really suit this sort of film. And I can't remember if Carla had said to me at some point she really wanted to do more writing stuff. So I said, well, I'm dyslexic, so I can't really write very well anyway. I'll come up with good ideas, but that's about as far as I'm interested in doing a proper script. So I said, can you come and write this with me? So we started working on it. But day to day, my sort of regular jobs is either filmmaking, as in like a general self-shooting producer sort of stuff. So I sort of normally have to shoot, edit, direct, produce, write the scripts, do the storyboards, and patch it all off for broadcast, like a lot of self-shooting producers do nowadays. And then if I do more freelance directing, then I can just maybe just direct, which is nice. But I find that I did a few features, and the problem with them is that I wasn't a producer and I wasn't a writer. I was just brought on to direct. And I found that there's always problems with, like overall, how much control do you have over the edit? How much control do you have over the grade and the score and the other crew? So projects like this, I sort of took the plunge and started to produce it myself, so you have more control over the end product.
Oh, definitely. And so were you excited to kind of flex your writing muscles then as well, Carla?
Absolutely, yeah. So we'd worked on a short film before, but he'd been the director. No, he'd been the DOP, hadn't you? That's another thing about. You've been a DOP for it, and I just saw the way that he worked with light and kind of did storytelling, and I just thought that it was awesome. So then when he came with this idea, I have to say it was one of the easiest things to write. I remember sitting down and just writing one evening, filling it all in, and just being completely lost in the story of it, and then sending it back to him, and just being completely in love with the story, which gives you a real level of confidence, because I often write things that just like sit on my laptop and the world will probably never see them. But it was one of those ones that it just kind of gave you a confidence to push forward, because it felt so lovely and it felt so needed. And we started researching, actually, because we didn't want to speak on a subject we didn't really know much about. So we started looking at history and the LGBT plus history during World War II. And I think we found quite a bit to do with men and relationships between them, but there was nothing of this ilk. And so we were like, that's even more reason to make this happen. And that just spurred us on. So yeah, really awesome experience.
It's really interesting, because yesterday we had Russ T. Davis student talk, where we touched on a moment from Torchwood where Captain Jack dances with like the real Captain Jack, and that's in World War II during the Blitz. And then he was saying about how it's like very well, like there was precedent for it, like the research exists for this. And it was so interesting, kind of something that I remember watching God knows how long ago as like a work of like fiction, is so it could be like real as well. The first half, there's kind of two halves to Wings. I was wondering, so when you were writing the script, was there originally more, because the first half is essentially it's like a love story montage, very a la kind of Pixar, that like warm, kind of fuzzy but heartbreaking and heart-wrenching like story like that. Was it always written to be that way, or did you have any like dialogue or other points like that?
I mean, as you said, the initial concept in my head was when I was kind of having this, like what it was. I worked on like a Heritage Lottery documentary, and it featured land girls, and I was having these images in my head, and I thought, and I quite like, I love all the Disney Pixar films, and the introduction to the film Up is, iconic. And I was just like, oh, look, that the way that works, that'd be quite. I'd love to do that, but with maybe this idea, something like that. So. So I kind of had some influence from that, and then the second half, I always a big fan of like Ken Loach style cinema, just that sort of gritty British social realism. I thought it'd be really cool to suddenly just have that juxtaposition where it just breaks from that almost dreamlike lovey montage to the realities of now, when everything's gone shit. And they're in there, everything's not great, until they can kind of meet again.
Even the more modern bit, we had to sort of gauge that, because it's 2011, so when civil partnership came into play. So even it was quite interesting to see sort of the art department have to just gauge that quite right, because it's quite easy to go, oh well, it's nearer to now, and then just summarize. But it was quite interesting to watch them, whack out the big old computers, and the things that we've forgotten weren't actually that long ago. And also the other thing I was going to say is, because we filmed it in two sections, we filmed the first half, the period part, and then it was quite a few months before we filmed the part that was set in the more modern times. So we were quite lucky. We got to film it exactly sort of in two halves and then bring it together, which was really nice.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Liz.
I was going to say, yeah, I think it works really beautifully, that kind of juxtaposition, and even down to kind of the color of the two as well, and how it's kind of almost, it is like a perfect, well, not obviously it's not a perfect love story because they would have been together, but this kind of almost rose tinted, these lovely kind of like warm colors, and then such a warm sense of nostalgia, and then contrasting to now of this kind of going from that homely to a clinical home. And I thought that was done really beautifully. And the music is something that's so obviously in the montage is really prominent, but also those notes and the motif that comes in as well when they see each other again. Did you have a piece of music that helped you in writing or throughout production as well, or is that something that came in much later because it is so integral to your story?
Shall I talk about the color and then you can talk about the music, Carla, if you want?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of in terms of the color palettes, I think from really early on, myself and Bayley, the DOP, we had long conversations about the sort of visual identity of the film, because even though it's not as obvious, well, it might be, I don't know, it sort of takes place over time, and so we try to find identity for each of the months and give each of the months a sort of a different lighting look, and then obviously that would translate into the color grade later on. So we had a lot of different mood boards depending on this sort of, the time of year, and then also the time of day within that time of year, and that had to also match with the sort of production designer's view of what worked for the actual time, what colors were actually present, what wallpapers were present for the time, and stuff like that. And did the mahoganies match with the lighting at that sort of time with their costumes, and etc. So it was quite meticulous in that, and I think we spent more time on that because we knew it was a visual piece and it didn't have much dialogue in, so we thought the visuals needed to be really something special, because that's
they have to tell the story where the dialogue can't.
And in a similar way with the music, obviously, as you said, it was integral. I think if I'm right, Jamie, you had a stand-in piece when we were editing, which was at times, which was Up. Was it?
Oh yeah, it was actually the intro to Up. Yes, we did use, the music from that.
Yeah, just to give it a feel. And then after that, a music producer called John Mills, who usually does pop music and commercial music. He doesn't do this type of work normally, but actually would like to go more into it now. He was in LA and he was creating it and sending us bits, and it was a long process, obviously, because sometimes if we do a slight edit, then the whole thing would be sent out, and we probably gave him a headache at time to time. But he made the whole track, and actually it's on Spotify, so if anyone enjoyed the music, you can listen to the song. And that final song he made for the end credits with an amazing singer called Ida Rose. So that was a really special part for us.
What was the production, like making those montage, the first half of the film? Because obviously you were starring in it as well. So what was it like? Did Jamie direct you in when you previously worked together as well, and what was that like?
So the piece I've made before, I wasn't actually in it, so I hadn't been directed by Jamie before.
Right.
I remember there was a conscious decision because we'd been so hands-on with this project, and making a period piece on a micro budget is not an easy task, and we were so involved. But I do remember the lovely team around us, and Jamie was like, you need to take a step back when you're shooting, so you really do need to just let everyone kind of take up the reins. But it wasn't easy at all, and it's quite nerve-wracking because you've kind of brought everyone there and you've inspired everyone to make this piece, and then you want to do a good job in front of the lens, and you know that people are watching on the monitor in the room next door, and so it was quite nerve-wracking, and also things that you wouldn't normally think of. So for example, I remember one light went, and I knew that light was expensive, and so the light went, and then they were like, okay, and action, and I was like, in my head, I was like, how am I going to hide that I know that lamp's worth so much money? We've got to pay for that later. But you just have to kind of put it in the back of your mind. But it's not easy. But I think we found it worked because Jamie and everyone around us was really, really supportive. and we have a
You,
good
you
relationship.
just reminded me of that, blowing the HMI bulbs. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, because you work with the DOP, and obviously I know Jamie so well, so I think you know when they have a panicked face or a worried face. So I remember the DOP looking concerned, and I was like, what's that? Whereas normally as an actor, you just let them get on with it. So I think that was the major hurdle.
And how long did you have to shoot that, the first half of the film, as opposed to the second half?
Was it four 12-hour days or?
Yeah, it was over 2 weekends.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we did 2 weekends for. I don't know if they were 12-hour days. I feel like they may have slightly gone over. Did they go over?
Yeah.
Don't tell our students that.
Because I think the bit that was difficult is we had like children as well, particularly in that first bit, and obviously you have to be so stringent about the paperwork and when they come and when they go, and that kind of made some of the timing.
That's right. Yeah. So we was obviously working with the lovely actors that agreed to get involved. They had obviously, everyone was doing it for free, and they sort of had their other paid film jobs. So we just kind of work around their schedules, which kind of meant, some things just took a little longer than they normally would, just because of, if everyone's getting paid, you get paid, and everyone's there for the time. But when everyone's doing it as favors, they when they have to go. So you kind of just have to sort of work around it a little bit. But essentially it's what it normally is, for 12 to 13-hour days.
Yeah, so that was for that. We hired, it was in Colchester, so we Airbnb'd a place, and the majority of us stayed there so that we could be there first thing in the morning.
Oh, there was obviously something as well that often makes things go a bit longer. When normally I have all my shot list and everything planned, and then sometimes I'll go, oh God, it'd be really cool if we could just do this shot. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a really good idea. But we really where are we going to find the time to do like another, that's like 45 minutes to set up all the lighting and camera. And then we've got to change the costume. And I'm like, yeah, but it'll be good, wouldn't it? And everyone's like, yeah. And then you realize you're 2 hours over schedule. But it was like, for instance, that top shot of them hugging in bed. I was really particularly wanted that, so I sort of said, I really, really want to get that, and that was kind of like in the moment. And we decided to do that day after, but that meant we had to hire a jib for the day after, and obviously we've like no, and just sort of said, oh, we're going to do this tomorrow. So good, thanks everyone.
I'm surprised you could pull that off at such quick turnaround. And you mentioned before as well, Carla, that this was done on a micro budget. So how did you finance this as a film? Obviously, you're doing it out of hours for a lot of people and actors and some crew. So how did you go about that?
So it was the first half that was definitely the most expensive. It's the period side of it. I always reference these Christmas lights that were on the tree, actually, in one of those scenes. They were like so expensive in order to get them accurate for the time. So it's all the little things that you don't think tally up. What we did is we did a Kickstarter, and we managed to sort of raise most of the money for that first shoot. But then the rest of it was me and Jamie just kind of topped it up and financed the rest of it. But we were extremely fortunate because we had people like those that we rented it from. We reached out to a company that we knew someone there, and they did a good deal for us. I mean, certain things like insurance, obviously it's not movable. Where we could, like catering, we had my parents actually have a camper van, and they came and did catering. They now just still talk about loving that experience. So they were like running this camper van food shack. So it's things like that make it possible, though. So it was that, and that was it really. A bit of us, a bit of Kickstarter, and that's how we had to do it.
Yeah, I think ultimately, for a lot of short films, the reality is you're not making money for it, so producers don't care. You're not going to be able to finance it unless you are lucky and get funding from, like Channel 4 or BFI or you're doing some sort of arts council thing. But then obviously you have to do stuff with community work. It's hard to get funding. So if you want to make something good, you've just got to save up and pretty much pay for it yourself, or hope. Even with the Kickstarter stuff, right? It was amazing. You got the general public to invest in it because they want to see a film like that. But let's be honest, what, 60% of it's going to be your friends and family who are doing it just because they're, you know, they can't not help, you know, give you a tenner, you know. So that would be bad if they didn't. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we might have held out for longer. What happened for us as well is obviously you have to know when your circumstance is good. And Rosie Day, one of the main actress, she was available, and she said, I can do this before Christmas, but then after that I have got to do loads of other projects, and that's the only gap I can see. And I think actually everything, pulling it together. So you could have waited for funding, but sometimes I think sometimes it's just better to get on with it, and I think that's what we had to do in this instance.
And at what point did Miriam come on board? And obviously that's a huge name to get there, and exciting that she wants to be involved. So yeah, at what point was she? Did she kind of agree to it, and was that ever kind of touch and go along the process of course, because she's must get offers all the time?
Yeah, she works a lot. Yeah, so I think we hadn't filmed the first bit just yet. I think we were before that. Is that right, Jamie? I think
This was actually the day when we met Bobby in Soho for a meeting to sort of get him on board on the project.
Yeah, and I don't think we had filmed the first. So basically, it was a case of circumstance, and let this story inspire anyone watching this that it's worth taking an opportunity, because we're not lying when we say she walked past us and we chatted and we gave her the script, and that's genuinely how it happened.
Yeah.
And she fell in love with the script and was just so excited, which was just amazing. And she had to go to Australia, so she was going to be gone for over 6 months, I think, and said I could film it when I get back. And true to her word, she filmed it when she was there on the day and turned up and filmed it with us. And it just is as magical as that, to be honest.
Where did you see her? Did you know kind of that she was going to be somewhere at an event?
No, it was literally just came out of Soho House, met Bobby, went for was going to go to Chloe's, went with to get some lunch, and she just sort of got out of a cab and went to sort of, you know, walk past us, and I was like, oh look, Carla, it's one of your favourite actresses there. And at that point it sort of dawned on us, thinking, well, this is literally the sort of, we would love to just at least get some feedback, because if she thinks this is in bad taste, then, you know, of all people, we should like change it.
And truly, I think that's what we were aiming for, was feedback.
Yeah, we weren't actually expecting her to sort of, we were not going to ask her to be in it. We just, my tap's gone off.
We went in the script. we went with the script and we were just like, could you read this and just let me know your thoughts? My email's at the bottom. And then she read it in front of us and then just said, well, what part am I playing then? And we were just like, and that's how it happened. And then she just wrote on the front, I'll be in this, and signed it, which was even more amazing, because if you thought it didn't happen, you had it written on the script. So yeah, just amazing.
And if she didn't like the script, I'm sure she would have said so.
She would have said so.
Yeah, and that would have been good, because we would have known we needed to do a bit more develop on it. Yeah.
And what was it like directing Miriam? Obviously she's extremely experienced, and so presumably doesn't need kind of a much direction, but what was that process like of kind of stepping up and directing someone who, you know, is so of that caliber?
Yeah, like pretty scary. Yeah, you know, I was sort of thinking before the shoot, sort of a couple of previous projects that I've done and had, you know, sort of named casting, so I was a bit like, oh, you know, it should be fine. But then, you know, really when you sort of think about it, it's like, okay, but no one ever at that level. And I remember seeing an interview with Ian McKellen in once, and he sort of said he often has this issue where a lot of people are very, you know, a bit scared to direct him and give him any direction or feedback or anything because of how big he is, and he just wishes people would just stop being, you know, like that and just get on with it, because that's he wants to be directed. So I sort of maybe took that sort of idea to mind a bit and didn't mind giving a bit of direction. But to be honest, it's like her and Virginia. I mean, they're so experienced and so incredible at performing. You just sort of just quickly, briefly sort of say what's happening in the scene, what's about to happen, what sort of lens we're using. And then you go action, and then they do it, and you're like, oh, we don't even need a second take. Well, we should take a second take just because it's polite, but I think we got it, you know. Didn't really need much or anything.
And they're very direct, aren't they? They're sort of like, well, what can you see? What do you need from this? Very to the point, which as an actor, I think as well is nice to see, because we can be a bit like, oh, you know, a little bit worried and asking those questions. But it was like, what do you need to see? What do you need? Okay, and then they would you could just tell their experience just kicked in, and they would just deliver. It's amazing.
And of course, you mentioned Virginia there, Virginia McKenna, who is obviously an icon in her own right as well. What was the process? So was Miriam formally attached kind of for a date when Virginia agreed as well? Or did she kind of reach out again saying, this is something Miriam may or may not do, but we'd really love you to take part?
The lovely thing is that Virginia and Miriam didn't know anything about like each other. So they both got in, and the same as Rosie and Bobby, no one knew the other one was going to be involved in it, so it wasn't kind of, you know, sometimes things have to snowball. What was nice is that everyone kind of fell in love with the idea and genuinely did it for that, and then was like, oh, we're all together. And with Virginia, it was just that we've done conservation work, myself and Jamie, before, you know, big advocate for that, and she has a charity called the Born Free Foundation, and I was meeting with her son to do with that, and then it came up in conversation, and he said, oh, I could ask Mum in regards to that part, and then he sent her the script, and then she came back as a yes, but she didn't know at that point about Miriam. And then when they both knew, they were delighted because they both thought the world of each other, so that was really, really lovely.
Oh, that's amazing. And what were your kind of the main things that you both learn on the production of it, whether that's in the pre-production, in the the post side of it and distribution, or actually kind of on set? Of course, you both had multiple roles across the entire lifespan of this. So what were your main kind of takeaways and things that you've learned from it?
So much.
You can do a few. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, for me, being involved, I would say as sort of an actor, it's so wonderful to know more about production and kind of the tech side of it, and just kind of logistical. I actually wish that I'd been trained more, and I hope drama schools do a bit more about kind of what's involved in filmmaking aside from the actor, because now I have so much more of an understanding, and doing something in a period piece was just, it was captivating to watch how everyone worked and pulled everything together. I suppose tokens I would take away from it would be sort of Miriam and Virginia's kind of to the point confidence. I would like to take a dollop of that, because I think that serves you well. Being jammy and just going for it and just seeing if someone, you know, something sticks. I think we've both learned that for sure. And I would definitely say to anyone who's thinking, oh, should I send my script to this person or whatever, absolutely. And yeah, just loads of, I suppose, what else would we do? Distributing is a difficult process, but I think once you've done it, like with Film Freeway, and you've worked out the process and you know what to prioritize, I think we would be better. There's a few that I would have done differently in terms of picking film festivals, but on the whole, once you've done it once, it's quite an easy process. So kind of, yeah, that side of it. Over to you, Jamie.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely the sort of the worth of doing things properly has been a big thing. I think for those of people who go to film school, like people at Bournemouth, I know Bournemouth is really highly regarded, and there's loads of great people come out of there. It's probably obvious, but for myself, I was like an actor first, and then I eventually got into behind the scenes and filmmaking sort of stuff. So I sort of learned a lot of it in the job. And there's a lot of like, you know, that sort of the whole YouTube idea of making films where you just get a group of people and you just sort of do a bit of everything. The idea of actually just being a producer and a director, and having literally like maybe 50 people working on the project, and everyone who's specialist, and making sure it goes through every single step of the production, you know, and you know, even in post-production, when you get your, you know, you first assemble, then you do your edit, and then it's put through for the grade and then the score, and then it's actually got a proper dubbing mix by a mixer, and then you do your DCPs, and then, you know, like, rather than just do everything yourself in Premiere and just put a LUT on it and just hope for the best, you know. And then it, you know, the thing of doing everything proper to the high cinema standard is, you know, you sort of set that precedent, and then you've sort of got this product that's really good and really worth the huge amount of money it costs to put into film festivals. I think is yeah, it sort of feels worthwhile. And I think you see one of the things as well for distribution, one of the things I knew, because I have worked a little bit alongside a couple of film festivals, and one of the things I always know is that with distribution, you're going to look for, you know, film festivals want basically films that look and sound fantastic and got fantastic actors in, because it's going to help them get Joe Blogs into the seats and make them money at the end of the day. Even though, you know, film festivals are for filmmakers, right? But it's still a business. They need to make money. So I thought, you know, having sort of talent on board in some sort of capacity is going to help get it distributed and get people interested in watching it. And as we've seen, even though like some people are like, no, it's not all about that. As we've seen, when people do pick wings, normally the poster for their festival, or normally, you know, the poster for the best of British stuff like that, is Miriam and Virginia, because that's probably the highest talent that they've got. So in a weird way, kind of how most movies do in assigning talent in order to sell it, it does work. So, you know, clearly it is worthwhile trying to reach out to names to get your film out there.
Having said that, we had quite a nice notion, because obviously we didn't intend for that, and when we had that, we did have sort of people that had never worked on a shoot working in the camera team. So we're quite proud because of that, because we both say, you know, it can be quite, there's a lot of nepotism, and there's a lot of who you know, and that can be really frustrating. So when you have a shoot, I think if all of us strive as well to have the talents, the names, the established people, because that's the way it works, but also give each other a chance, and kind of, it was so lovely to have all age groups, all experiences on one set, and it made such a lovely environment. So I think we champion for that as well.
Yeah, such a nurturing and accessible environment as well.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the film. I'm gonna bring my last question, but just before I do, I want to say congratulations on the film. It's beautiful. If anyone watching hasn't yet watched it, we're screening it again tomorrow, I believe, for Iris on the Move Bournemouth. But also you can catch it all this year on All 4, where all the other Best of British Films from Iris Prize 2020 are also screening. But yeah, so what's next for both of you? Are you going to be working on anything again together, or yeah, what are your next projects? Because I know after this, I'm sure a lot of people will be looking out for what else is coming their way from you both.
Yeah, we're sick of each other now, so I think it's the first time we've spoken in about 2 years now since the. No, joking.
Yeah, we do say we need to, because I think as well, if you do have a situation where you kind of work together quite well, in the sense that me and Jamie, I think, are quite different characters and we specialize in different fields, so therefore putting us together is a good mix. So if you have a friend who's a bit more involved in actors and characters, and then you've got someone who actually knows what they're doing with the camera, then it's really lovely to put those two together, and that kind of works for us. So yeah, we definitely want to do something else. I have to be entirely honest, I think lockdown is as much as it should be a creative time, I feel like, talking to friends and things, it's hard to be creative with the way things are at the moment. And I thought I'd have a million ideas, and I have a few, but nothing massive. It's just a really difficult time. So I mean, from my perspective, we absolutely want to work together, and it's starting to sort of see the light, but it's been a bit tricky, to be totally honest with you. But yeah, what's your take, Jamie?
Yeah, same. No, I mean, it's the same sort of thing. It's like I've been trying to keep creative and doing bits of bobs, but it's obviously not film stuff. I did make a film in the summer, but that was based on Shakespeare, so it was already a script that was obviously in place. Um, and I've got some ideas that I'd like to develop, but it's just hard to sit in your room and then work in your room, and then you're having your weekends in your room, and then also try to somehow make a film for fun, write a script for fun in your room. So things are happening, but I think just for how Wings did, really, just let the ideas stew, and then when it's right, it will pop out, and the story will just be all cooked and ready to eat. Maybe I'm hungry. That's what's happening in these analogies.
Did you ever, that just made me think as well, did you ever consider kind of ever adapting Wings for as a feature?
Everyone keeps saying that. I don't. I think everyone is like, it would be a good feature. For me personally, in my head, I can't. If it was, it wouldn't. I don't see it as being as interesting. I think because I think it would still be good, and I think there's some great ideas, and it would probably make a really cool, almost like a BBC Films series, something like that. But obviously, I think what made Wings unique was the fact that it was a sort of a silent film shot in that way, in sort of, half speed, and then broke away to have that almost social realism at the end, which is very different. It doesn't look like a regular sort of short film that you would normally see. So if you made that into a feature, it would have to be just like a normal feature with dialogue and normal scenes and everything that was magical about Wings. It would just turn into just a period drama, So that's why I'm a bit not as keen on the idea of turning it into a series. But yeah, possibly.
Yeah. I was going to say the nice thing as well is if you have a film that kind of touches on a social issue or something, then it's definitely worth kind of exploring that and letting it do its job, because I think like we've given Wings to sort of the residential home where we filmed it, because a lot of the the elderly people that you'll see in one of the scenes, they were just there and they just end up being in the scene, which is really lovely. And so we've given it to that care home, and they own like 20 others, so they've got little cinemas and they play it, and that's its job. It's meant to be there for, maybe there's one person in the care home who never came out or had a difficult time and might be touched by it. So I think we've tried to sort of give it a life after film festivals. Not that we're not at the end yet, but we hope that it will still continue in that way, and kind of connect with charities that deal with LGBT history and stuff, so that it can really be of comfort in some way if we can.
No, that's lovely. And Jamie, I think you're right in that of risk of kind of spoiling what's special about it, because I think if you were gonna, I guess, take the structure of how Up works as well and having this montage and then having that as almost like a prelude, and then you've got the main film of them going into this home, you can't really have that story without conflict. And it's so beautiful that they're finding each other again. And there's that, and there isn't the horribleness or children or like the kids and the grandkids feeling lied to and things like that. And it's just everyone is so supportive, and it is kind of, it's just beautiful. So yeah,
I think there's 100%. That's kind of the way I'm sort of, when people sort of say it, I think there could be a nice idea of looking at maybe a 6 or 10 part drama of looking at life of land girls, at that time, and some sort of relationship that, that sort of thing. That would probably be quite nice. But once again, it's kind of, that's attracting the market of most people who like sort of, period drama TV series like Downton Abbey or Call the Midwife, that sort of stuff. It's a different genre, it's a different audience, so and a different writing style even. So I think there's something there, but I don't know if I could pull it off.
Don't give yourself enough credit. But congratulations again on the film, both of you. Thank you for joining me. And as I said before, everyone, if you haven't seen it or you'd like to see it again, it's available on all4.com now. And thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so
Cheers.
much.
Bye.